Well, I'm Hobie. I want to thank everybody for coming. I'd like to start with, I guess, thanking all the people who made this possible. When Shirley got really sick, her youngest daughter, Shirley, was a godsend. She spent a lot of time with her and helped her get through all of the things. Shirley never lost her spirit. She was quite the person. So what you see here is her older daughter, Tammy. Tom and Sandy Rotella and Levine, they helped me set this up. A lot of memorabilia. Eva Solberg, who did 7 days, graciously let me use her video for this. The other video you're going to see is Jeff and Joanne Peacock put this together. They did just a gorgeous job with some of the videos. And of course, Tyler from Flight Academy, which was my guru in all the electronics. So, and of course, Brother Lee back there giving me moral support. But if we could, I'd just like to start with an opening prayer. And Lord, we thank Thee for today. We thank Thee for all these kind people that came. We thank You for Shirley's life. We ask that Thou would be with us and we would remember in good spirit. In Jesus' name, amen. So, I guess the story starts with Shirley coming to the airport. And she came to the airport, it had to be in the 70s. I mean, some of these dates disappear in time, but she worked for Avis Rent-A-Car, and from that she got a position in the airport office as public relations director. And that was how I come to meet her. My dad had flown here during the war, and so he and a lady called Grace Pugh, whose husband he worked for, had a lot of the history going back to the 30s. And so as part of capturing that process, Shirley was instrumental in the first airport history book and several others. She became really good friends with Gracie Pugh, and they spent a lot of time together. So Shirley was, through some unfortunate events that happened, it kind of developed the fear of flying. But one day she decided to learn to fly, and through the goodness of a gentleman named Bill Hazlett, who taught her how to fly in his Cub in the old Champlain Airport. And of course, a lot of the baseball diamond now in Colchester used to be the Champlain Airport. And that was where a lot of that all happened. That was pretty active back in the late 60s. So once she learned to fly, she found her beloved Champion up in Franklin County, and through some help of some friends, she actually purchased the airplane and bought it back here, and that was in 1984. So when you think back how fast the time goes. I first came to the Burlington Airport in 1959. So, matter of fact, the other day I checked out a young man for his license, and I discovered he was born 2 months before I retired from the airline. So somehow the time disappears. Very nice young man. Anyway, with the Champ, she started flying, and she flew all over the place. And Shirley was a big motorcycle rider, and she was kind of a natural athlete. She learned by doing. She was definitely a visual learner. She didn't do well with books. I remember one day I bought a book. She would always complain about me when we had the motorcycle riding. She was a very, very good rider. So one day I stumbled upon a book about riding motorcycles. So like so many things, there's one key thing I was missing, and I read that, and I implemented it, and she couldn't believe I learned that out of a book. Shirley was a doer. Anyway, the airplane sat outside for a number of years, and like all old airplanes, it got a little older, and it got where I didn't have a lot of faith in it. So as it came time to retire, I said, why don't you sell me half the airplane, and we'll be partners, and we'll rebuild it. So she did, and in the 2001, it was October, I guess, there was an airworthiness directive on the wooden wing Champ, so we had to take it apart anyway, and it went down to Rutland. Came back 2.5 years later. I mean, I had more death threats in those 2.5 years than I have all my life. But anyway, when it came back, all rebuilt, that's about when digital cameras were coming out. So I said, why don't we see if we can do some aerial photography? And so she had an eye for the picture. I mean, the digital camera had all the smarts. She could frame a picture in her mind, and you can see some of her work. And she had a very good run. I mean, it was, we started in June of '04, and it was really the last year or so the drones really started to take over a lot of the stuff we were doing, but still did a lot of photography work. So the airplane became her identity. She's the only person I ever know that didn't have a tail number. It was, "Hey, Shirley," had her own transponder code, and her signature call was, "Burlington Tower, I'm coming home," right?
Oh, I'm coming home.
So we flew it a lot. She had a motorcycle she'd ridden for 100,000 miles. And traded that in and bought a newer one, and we used to go and ride in the Adirondacks. Like the motorcycle was kind of relaxing for me because, if you're around the airport, you're always on display, but we could go ride the bike. We were just riding the bike, and the Adirondacks were beautiful. So I was kind of the silent partner, and she ran the flying business. And Shirley was a natural salesperson. I can't believe that no one ever saw that in her. She interviewed very, very well, and she'd get in a job she had trouble with, and then she'd be doing something else. But the photographer, she found her purpose in life, and it was. You can see the work is just beautiful. So one of the things I wanted to talk about is how Shirley came to the Lord. Shirley's became a believer in Jesus, and I know she's in heaven. I'll see her someday, but it was kind of an interesting story. When Shirley was young, she was quite the athlete. She had a horse. You can see all the horse pictures. She was just very good with a horse, very good with a motorcycle. But the family had a camp on Lake Sunapee. And one of the things she liked to do when she was swimming is she would follow the bottom down and see how far out she could go before she would surface. Well, one day her dad brought her a set of the new frog flippers that became the rage, and so she put those on, and little did she know she went out a lot farther than she thought. So when it came time to come up, she said the surface she just couldn't reach it. She couldn't hold her breath anymore, and she swallowed just a huge amount of water. It's the last thing she remembers. She said she remembers seeing the bubbles go up, she remembers seeing light, she remembers the memory ended. And miraculously, she woke up laying on the beach, not spitting out water, not gasping for breath, just very, very tired. So that was the first miracle in Shirley's life, and we used to talk about that a lot. And I said, how do you think you got from drowning to on the beach? And she would get, when you asked her questions she wasn't expecting, she'd get very quiet. As things went on, she became very good friends with a local pastor's wife. And they used to ride the motorcycle together and fly the airplane. So eventually she came to know the Lord, and I guess that's what I'd like to talk to everybody a little bit about. There is a truth, there is a reality. None of us work with reality. We all work with our perception of reality. But reality, I can tell my students, reality exists whether you believe it or not. And with airplanes, if you violate the laws of physics, justice is swift and sure. With the Lord, it's just as sure, but not so swift. But 2,000 years ago, God became a man. He came into this world, born of a virgin, lived a sinless life, died according to the scriptures, and rose again for the grave. And he offers pardon to anybody that's willing to accept it. The problem is we have to accept it. So my plea to all of you is that you consider that. Let Jesus into your life. You'll forgive your sins. Jesus gives purpose to life. One of the problems we have, all of this things going on in this country, is without the Lord, life has no purpose. If it has no purpose, then you blow with the wind. But the Lord will give you purpose in life. It's my prayer that all of us would come to know Him. There's some handouts here. I'd be happy to talk to anybody. But anybody that is willing to let the Lord in their life is pardoned for all their sins. God's standard is not man's standard. His standard is perfection. That's not humanly possible. But the Lord paid the price. And if you accept Him, He will pay your debt, and someday you'll see Shirley in heaven. So it's my prayer that all of us would ponder that. And I'm sure Shirley would like to see you all there. Accept the Lord and meet her someday. So I thank you all for coming. We've got some beautiful videos that have been done. I'm going to play the videos, and then once we're done, anybody would like to speak is welcome. We'd love to have Shirley's story. So let me just close with a word of prayer. Lord, we thank you for Shirley's life. We thank you for these fine people that came to honor her memory. We ask that you would open their eyes, that they would see or accept your forgiveness and be with her someday in heaven. I ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Let me all set time to play the videos. We've got some beautiful videos, and I think they're very exemplary of Shirley's life. Thank you.
This grandmother type woman gets out of it like, oh my God, did she fly that in here? Holy.
Welcome to Stuck in Vermont, brought to you by 7 Days. My name's Ava Sahlberger. We are here at the Burlington International Airport in South Burlington, Vermont, where pilot Shirley Chevalier is going to take us up in her 1959 Champion single-engine plane.
We are going to go down to Basin Harbor and do lunch. I happen to have gotten bit by the bug of flying many years ago since I was 40 and I'm 71, and the champ has never failed me.
For 3 decades, Shirley has been flying single-engine airplanes here in Vermont, and in 2004, she started a new business called Fly Rate Aviation, where she uses her unique perspective from the air to take aerial photography.
When my kids left home, everything happened to me when I was 40. I had a very odd beginning. I had such a fear of flying, and damn it, I really wanted to do this. The rest is history. I have been flying her here for 30 years. The air traffic controllers all know me, and a lot of them have come and gone and retired and moved on, and new ones come in.
How many airports have you flown into?
Oh my goodness, all of them in the state of Vermont, some in New Hampshire, some in New York. I've been around. Oh, my plane. Grace Pugh, the first lady pilot in the state of Vermont, and we knew I wanted to buy an airplane. And we saw her. I said, it's mine. The renovation was 2 years, 7 months. They fixed the seat special for me. I picked out all the colors. And
Why all the little hearts?
I just like them. It's just a lady's airplane. Everybody loves my champ. I've always been interested in photography ever since I was in high school. And for many years, I was too busy with children and family and la. And when all of that went away at around 40, then I picked it up again. And then at 63, I said, okay, champ, it's your turn to help me out now. So I started this business. It's a sense of pride when you give somebody a beautiful picture. I just barely passed my 9th year, and I have had the time of my life.
Well, I want to stop talking so we can get up in the air.
Let's do it, girl. Just check this. Look at this engine. Got a new battery. Clear prop.
I am an ordinary person on a jet airplane. Who can control the begin? Who can only one?
We're at the Heritage West ramp. I have information, Kia, and we're going to Basin Harbor.
99 Echo, runway 19er taxi via Alpha, hold short taxiway Bravo for the pushback.
So who don't you know at the airport? That's the question.
They know who I am.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do.
And there's people up in the tower. Wave to them.
I should inform the public that I am afraid to fly. Yeah, afraid to fly. Yeah, afraid to fly. To all the old medieval merchants on the coach jetway.
minute in the most beautiful airport. It's called Basin Harbor. You want to go and sit in the airplane for just a minute? That to me is frosting on the cake when little people come by and big people.
This is the plane that Shirley drives.
Look at you guys. Can you
Talk
tell
to
me
you
what they
about
asked you again? I just think it's interesting.
Where's the man?
Yeah, where's the man? Don't you just love it? The wind has shifted around, so we're going to take off that way. Just that you might get a little breezy, that's all. Burlington approach tram 999. I'd like to go over to the Mount Philo before I come home. Tower 99 Echo, I'm coming home. 99 Echo. When you get up there, all of the rules are different. You are such a small speck in this world. It's such a freedom.
Photography and flying, there's really not much that she can't do. And we will get stuck with you again real soon. Happy trails. How do you stay so young and vibrant?
Young and
do it?
vibrant. Well, look at the time. You're out of time.
Oh my gosh, I gotta go.
You gotta go. I hang around with people like you.
Oh, yo.
Wondering where to begin. Loneliness rises
Never giving up when life gets too hard. Right around the corner is a brand new start. It feels like we're riding on a roller coaster. We're getting so far, we're not getting closer. Life is all about the up and down. Take your medicine, stop fooling around. Never take yourself too seriously. Life with the world and live and be free. Why do more people trying to take life slow? Why is every day so impossible? When I speak my mind, I tell no lies. Once upon a time, I laughed so hard I cried. Doesn't really matter at the end of the day, as long as you have life and you feel happy. Don't hold you down, will I make you strong? Like, come on everybody, won't you sing this song? Smiles on faces, we pulling smiles on faces. Smiles on faces, we pulling smiles on faces. Well, it's a long road and it's taking me home. Been a long day, still got a ways to go. I don't feel like we're getting older. Feel so alive, but we're that much closer. Keep pushing on when the times get tough. And even if the storm comes, the waves get rough. Our love it is greater than the deep blue sea. What's going around is coming around, is following me. Ain't it funny how things fall in place sometimes? Your shadow follows you when the sun don't shine. Some people spend a whole life living in their head, and I say listen to your heart instead. Keep searching for a lifetime, waiting for a sign. Something gives me hope that we'll be alright. If all the girls in the world were living across the sea, what a wonderful swimmer, yes you know that I would be. In a world gone crazy, and smile and save it.
Say hi.
When everything changes, I know we're gonna make it. Smiles on faces, smiles on faces, smiles on faces. We putting smiles on faces.
Hey, Obi, you ready? There you go. That's good.
That's good. I can walk down there. Okay.
Shirley, how was your ride?
Oh,
Oh, your glasses are broken. No, they're
I
fine.
just can't even. Words won't do it justice.
You said I was in my early 40s with a lot of life before me, when a moment came that stopped me on a dime. I spent most of the next days looking at the x-rays, talking about the options and talking about sweet time. I asked him when it sank in that this might really be the real end. How's it hit you when you get that kind of news? Man, what'd you do? And he said, I went skydiving, I went Rocky Mountain climbing, I went 2.7 seconds on a bull named Fu Manchu. And I looked deeper and I spoke sweeter and I gave forgiveness I've been denying. And he said, someday I hope you get the chance to live like you were dying. He said I was finally the husband that most of the time I wasn't, and I became a friend a friend would like to have. And all of a sudden, no admission, was in such an imposition. About 3 times that year I lost my dad. Well, I finally read the good book and I took a good long hard look at what I'd do if I could do it all again. And then I went skydiving, I went Rocky Mountain climbing, I went 2.7 seconds on a bull named Fu Manchu. And I looked deeper and I spoke sweeter and I gave forgiveness I've been denying. And he said, someday I hope you get the chance to live like you were dying. Like tomorrow was a gift and you got eternity to think about what you do with it. What did you do with it? What did I do with it? What would I do with it? Skydiving, I went Rocky Mountain climbing, I went 2.7 seconds on a bull named Fu Manchu. Then I looked deeper and I spoke sweeter and I watched an eagle as it was flying.
Shirley stories, and we're going to capture all that for people, and Sandy Rotella is going to start us off, and then once we're done with that, we have refreshments. You can pull all the chairs back to the tables and socialize as long as anybody wants to socialize. Thank you. Sandy.
Thanks, Sylvie. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Shirley's Celebration of Life. My name is Sandy, or Sam, as many call me. I met Shirley at the airport 45 years ago. My husband Tom and I own the airport gift shop. We'd been at the airport about a year when Shirley was hired. Shirley would bounce into my shop and say, "Hi, girlfriend," take a few Tootsie Rolls, grab a newspaper, and go out the door without paying and say, "Pay you later." But she never did, and that's another story. I used to watch her when she took flying lessons. The first time she landed, I watched her bounce down the runway. She parked her little plane next to a big Delta plane that had just landed ahead of her. The Delta pilot motioned to Shirley to turn on her headset. Shirley then said, "Hi." The Delta pilot said, "So, what do you want to be when you grow up, little girl?" There were many, many stories and fond memories over the years. One day at the respite house, Shirley at that point was pretty much sleeping. I sat on her bed and said, "Hi, girlfriend. I know why you're doing this. Today's my birthday, and I know how cheap you are, and you didn't want to buy me a present." All of a sudden, she smiled and squeezed my hand. I'm going to end this story with, one day I went to Shirley's house. She was outside chasing a monarch butterfly, trying to get pictures of it. If you'd like to see them, they're on the table over there. I remembered once I saw a quote in a book. It reminded me of Shirley that day. "A butterfly lights beside us like a sunbeam, and in a brief moment its glow and beauty belong to our world. But then it flies again, and though we wished it could have stayed, we feel lucky to have seen it."
If anybody else would like to speak, we'd love to have Shirley stories. You know, the butterfly reminded me, one of the things I told Shirley is, you know, this life we're a caterpillar, and all the battles of the butterfly are in the cocoon as a caterpillar. But I said, one day you go to sleep here and you wake up and you're a butterfly looking at Jesus. So I would like anybody else to speak that would like to come up. Please come ahead. Thanks.
Hi, I'm John. Shirley knew me as Dr. John. She called me Doc John, Dr. John. She had a lot of Johns in her life, so occasionally she had trouble keeping track of all the different Johns. Shirley was my good friend. She was my pilot mentor. I received my pilot's license thanks to her. I met Shirley a few years ago at a party. Imagine that. She always liked a good party. And at that party, it was mentioned that, I didn't know her very well, it was mentioned that she had an airplane. She loved to tell this story, and because apparently I said something like, I don't quite remember this, but I said something like, "Oh, you've got an airplane. I sure would like to ride in that thing." And she kind of looked at me and probably rolled her eyes and said, "All right, when would you like to go?" And I said, "How about tomorrow?" And so that was it. I met her at the airport the following day. We took our first flight, and our plan was to fly out of Burlington and go to Basin Harbor, which was one of her favorite places to go, especially for lunch. She loved their lobster rolls. And then we were planning on going on to Crown Point. There's a bridge there, Many of you may know that. It's just the south side of the lake. We're going to turn around and come back. And on our way to Basin Harbor, Shirley said something like, "I've always wanted to fly under the bridge." And I said, "Yeah, that sounds kind of neat." And then I started wondering, does she mean today with me in the back seat of this little tiny plane? And so I started getting, a little nervous there. So we landed at Basin Harbor, we had our lunch, we jumped back into Champ, and as we departed the runway, right as we were committed to the takeoff, bang, loud explosion and kind of rattle through Champ. I could feel it in the seat of my pants. And you don't really need to be a pilot to know that a loud bang and a shudder sensation in a plane is not good. And so we aborted our plan to go to Crown Point, thankfully. I wasn't particularly looking forward to flying under the bridge, but we had a new problem, and she declared an emergency, which was my first emergency. Hopefully that's my only in-flight emergency. My thoughts were, have we broken something? Something must have broken. Have we broken a strut? Have we blown a tire? And we're flying back to Burlington. The airport's coming into sight. Things were kind of quiet, and she, by that time I think I was getting sweaty palms, and she turned around and said something like, things aren't so bad, because there was a time that the entire wheel came off the plane, and I landed without any problems. And I thought, well, if she can land this plane without a wheel, then I think we're okay. And I took a breath and had a sigh of relief, and we landed without any issues. And we were surrounded by more fire trucks than I had ever seen in my life. To this day, we're not quite sure exactly what happened to Champ, but thankfully we made it, onto the ground safely. So most people probably would have said, "That's it. I'm never going to get in an airplane again." That was the most terrifying flight I've ever had. But for some reason, I felt a little differently. I don't know if it was Shirley's skills or sense of calm that day. Being in that beautiful airplane, that day the aviation bug had bitten me, and I think Shirley was very proud that it had. The following week I took my first flight lesson, and the rest is history. One of the greatest pleasures I've had after receiving my private pilot's license was being able to take Shirley up and fly her around and create my own adventures with her, sitting passenger. So it was pretty amazing knowing Shirley. I will miss her aviation tips, her pearls, her enthusiasm for life, her ability to live presently and in the moment, her laughter, her smile, and her loving friendship. Thank you.
Just to fill in the story, for those of you that might not have heard the whole episode about the wheel, but if she had the Champ, Shirley used to love to go up and land on the ice. And of course that didn't work well with the wheel pants on, because they will pack with snow and then the wheel won't turn. So the wheel pants on the Champ are not the simplest ones to come off. You basically have to take the axle nut off. So anyway, she had a friend help her, and they took it all off, put it all back together with the wheel pants off. Unfortunately, there's a little thing called a cotter pin that didn't get reinserted in the nut. So a few takeoffs later, she's taking off, and off she goes, and the tower calls, and "Hey, Cheryl, we found a wheel on the runway. Was that yours?" Of course, she looks down, and the wheel's gone, so it's a OMG moment. But anyway, classic Shirley, she handled it very well. She called her one of her instructors so she could get hold of through the tower, and he wisely told her to land on the pavement, because of course the axle would have dug into the dirt and spun the airplane around, and on the pavement it just skidded to a stop. And, one new axle and strong later, we're back in business. So that's, and all the people got to drive the fire trucks again. So it was anybody else like to speak?
My name is Jeff Houghton. My dad was the airport manager here back in 1981, so I've known Shirley since I was this high. And we were here on a weekend, and I'm going to elaborate on the story that's been said twice, because I was there, I witnessed it. We were here working with my dad and my uncle. This hangar was full of a DC-3, well, the old hangar. And I went walking out with my cousin, and at that time, I watched this Canadian registered mall come in and land and started bouncing, hit the runway twice. Next thing you know, boom, the gear falls out from underneath it, and it's laying on the runway. Of course, my dad being the airport manager, Justin and I come running back into the hangar. Dad. He's painting some artwork on the side of one of the C-47s. And I'm like, Dad, an airplane just crashed on the runway. And he's like, what? I'm like, Dad, an airplane just crashed on the runway. So sure enough, we hop in the car, or actually I think it was the van here at Northern Airways, went down onto the runway. The mall is sitting there, and I'm sitting there next to Dad, and the fire trucks are rolled out. And of course, there goes our friend Shirley. Shirley's taxiing out onto the runway. They gave her the clearance to take off on 15, so I've known Shirley forever. I'm waving to Shirley. She's taxiing by. She's waving back at me. And naturally, somebody's in the back seat with her. And I look, and all of a sudden, the airplane takes off, and I watch a wheel fall off. I go running over to my dad. Dad, what? Not now. I got to get this airplane off the runway. But Dad. And he's like, no, leave me alone. I got to get this off the runway. But Dad, Shirley just took off, and a wheel fell off. And he's like, what? Looks back. Shirley's out climbing off. They go back to the radio in the car, and the care basically verified what Hobie said. Yep. They talked to her, and they said she was headed to Shelburne to put it down there. And he basically got on the radio, so you get that airplane back here right now. You circle, we'll clean this up, and we'll take care of it. So I've never seen an airplane come off a runway so quickly. And so as Shirley circled around, she came in and she landed the airplane down, and just like Hobie said, because that's exactly how she did it. Natural born stick and rudder pilot. I've been around airplanes all my life, and that thing was, the scrape mark on that runway was perfectly straight. Any other pilot would have had it off into the grass or way off by the numbers panicking, but it was straight as an arrow. She did a great job, and it was, I'll never forget it. I was right there. So, thank you.
Jeff, come on up. Jeff is a gentleman to put the two of the videos together. Very, very good friend.
Thank you. Well, I'd like to tell you about the first time I met Shirley. I was living down in Newport, and a good friend of ours, or was my flight instructor, wasn't too excited with the FAA examiner that I went up with for my first check ride, or my first from my private, and it was time to take my instrument. And so he found Hobie, and so I met Hobie, and I talked to my CFI, and I said, let's fly up to Burlington and just get a lay of the land, because I was going to take my test the following week. And so I was going to do my IFR check ride with Hobie, or FAA test with Hobie. So we flew up and met Shirley, and Hobie told us what we were going to be doing for the test, so we went out and practiced and came back and landed, and so I was trying to sit down and find a time that we're going to take this test, and it was around Easter, and we know what happens in Shirley's life and Hobie's life around Easter. And we were also trying to figure out a time to take this test, and it was kind of between a rock and a hard place. And Shirley looked at me and said, well, you're family now, so we'll find a time. And sure enough, they squeezed me in and got it done. And that reminded me of a saying, or one of my favorite authors is Richard Bach, and he wrote Jonathan Livingston Seagull. And one of his quotes in another book called Illusions says that you'll know your friends better in the first 5 minutes of knowing them than you'll know your acquaintances in a lifetime. And that was sure true with Shirley and Hobie. And I'd like to leave you with the last quote from that book, and that was that don't be dismayed by goodbyes. A farewell is necessary before you can meet again. And meeting again after moments or lifetimes is certain for those who are friends. And I know Shirley is looking down at us right now, saying, holy crap, look at all my friends down there having a great time. We're going to be up and see you soon. Thank you.
Come on up, Lou. This is little Lou. He was Shirley's best companion and adopted son over where she lived.
Bring this down to my size here. Yeah, she was like an adopted mother to me. We met, and once we did, we just hit it off right off. And we've been on a lot of adventures with airplanes and stuff, and we had a few little thrills. But one time she goes, hey, let's go for a motorcycle ride. I was like, So I said, okay, let's go. So she had this bright idea to bring me over to Lincoln Gap. And I was like, oh yeah? She goes, yeah, we'll go get some ice cream. So next thing, we're going over to Lincoln Gap, and we're cruising right along. It was like, oh, Shirley, you can slow down a little bit, please. She goes, oh, you getting nervous? Just a little. But she's just cruising around there like nothing. I was like, we're not in the airplane. But no, she was a sweetheart. I'm going to miss her very much, like the rest of you. And, like a person's never forgotten or dies until they're forgotten. And we can see that it'll be a long time before that happens. So her memory will live on. So I got a lot more stories, but it's almost time to eat.
Any other takers? Well, if not, the food is available. You're welcome to pull the chairs back to the tables and socialize as long as you like. We thank you so much for coming. Shirley was quite the galley. The back of the card, she's going to be, the marker is going to be in, actually she was cremated, but the marker is going to be in Amston. And on the back of the picture card you got is what the gravestone is going to read. So that'll probably be in the spring. But we thank you so much for coming. She was quite the gal. The other thing I told her, I said I would hold her hand till Jesus took it, and that we did. So. A Scutney, I'm sorry, I get mixed up. A Scutney. You know, I'm surrounded by all these Southerners here from Northern Point. Anyway, thank you all for coming. The food's available. Socialize as long as you'd like, and God bless. Thank you.